Good morning friends. I am Dr. Repudi Vijayalatha, Chairperson, Board of Studies in Education, Department of Education, Kakti University, Warangal. Today we are going to discuss B.Ed, from the B.Ed syllabus, problem solving approach. So before going to what is problem solving approach, problem solving approach is at the core of human evolution. When we look at the human evolution, the humans learned how to solve simple problems from the very early age. That is, they learned how to eat, they discovered the fire, made coordinating movements, they started to communicate with everybody, and this is how they were able to go on to do all the needs and requirements what they required. And we can tell that the problem solving approach is a core of human evolution. Right, let us see what is problem solving. Problem solving approach gives the students an opportunity to actively construct their learning by thinking, questioning, visualizing the situation, searching for solutions, doing activities, experiments, and arriving at their own conclusions. So this is what a problem solving approach is. Now, this module of problem solving approach will give you, after going through this module, the student will be able to explain what is the importance of problem solving approach, understand various steps in problem solving approach, and they try to apply this knowledge to solve their daily life experiences, and it also facilitates the learner to become a seeker of knowledge. Right. So let us try to look into what is the definition of problem solving approach. So according to Jones-Ross, problem solving is being defined as an educative device whereby the teacher and the pupil attempts in a conscious, planned, purposeful manner to arrive at an explanation or a solution to some educationally significant difficulty. So this is what problem solving approach is, which tries to tell us that it is an attempt, a purposeful activity to solve a problem. Right, let us try to look into what are the steps involved in this method. The first one is this step involved in problem solving should be organized in such a way that the student can work on his own. So this is the first point. And the second one is the teacher should act as a guide, as a stage setter, as a motivating friend, and they should never give a ready-made solution to the students, but help them to find out a solution by creating a stage. This is what is the role of a teacher. Then to teach any topic or content in biology through problem solving approach, what are the steps we have to follow? We will be looking on into the next slide. So the first and foremost step is talking about creating a problematic situation. How are we going to create a problematic situation is that, if you try to look at, the teacher should create a situation or a condition where the problem has to be studied. Then this can be done with the help of demonstrations, with the help of discussions, question answers, etc. in the classroom, or you can take the students outside the classroom by engaging them in either field trips or excursions. So this is how you can create a problematic situation, which is the first stage in the problem solving approach. Then moving on to the second stage, after creating the problem, you have to sensing or identifying the problem is the second step. Here, the student identifies the problem on their own, and this is being done with the help of keen observation, where this keen observation, not only keen observation, but by cooperative approach that is happening between a teacher and a student. This helps him to identify the problem. And identification of the problem also depends upon the observation skill of an individual. The more keen observation the student tries to give, probably he is able to identify the problem in a clear manner. So this is how the sensing or identification of the problem happens, which is the second step. Now coming to the third step, after identifying the problem, we try to define what a problem is, which is the third step. Now the student should be able to state the problem in concise manner, in a clear manner, concise, defined and a clear statement. And there must be some key words in the statement of the problem which should be defined operationally. This is very, very important. Then learner will try to get a clear picture of this by searching the relevant literature related to the problem, so that a firm foundation is being laid on for the problem. So this is what is the third step. Then moving on to the next step, fourth step, we are going to analyze the problem. Analyzing the problem happens by collected data and information related to the problem. Here what we try to do is, when we try to collect the data or when we are going to analyze the problem, we are going to remove the irrelevant information, and the relevant data is only helpful for the student, which is giving direction for solving his problem. So this is how you are going to analyze the problem, which is considered to be the fourth step. Now moving on to the fifth step, after all this you are going to formulate the hypothesis. Formulating the hypothesis. What is formulating the hypothesis is nothing but the student is going to make intelligent guesses, or you are going to identify the reason behind the problem, where you are going to formulate tentative solutions to the problem. This is what is called as formulating the hypothesis. After formulating the hypothesis, we will be going on to the next step, that is the sixth step, that is testing of the hypothesis or experimentation. In testing of this hypothesis, one by one formulated hypothesis or assumptions are tested until a satisfactory result is being found, which is very much most reliable and valid. Then afterwards, after testing the hypothesis, we are going to move to the next stage, that is the seventh stage, collecting the data. While collecting the data or while performing, what we do is we try to take the help of some field surveys, library works, to get the relevant data. And this relevant data could be noted for experimentation, so that it gives us a reliable information related to the experiment. Then the next step is analyzing the data. So the analyzed data or the experimentation which we have done is analyzed by using different statistical techniques and methods, by using formulae or by using some laws. Theories are used for analyzing the data, and this data may be analyzed either by using qualitative techniques or either by using the quantitative techniques. Both of them could be used based on the problem which you have selected. Now moving to the ninth step is nothing but drawing conclusions and making generalization. So what we try to do on the basis of the analysis and interpretation of the data, the students will draw out the inferences. After completing the experiments, taking the findings or conducting a survey, we try to come together by using some statistical techniques where we try to interpret the data and the students draw the inferences and conclusions. And this, they reach to the real cause of the problem and its best solutions. This is what we can try to tell about. Then the next one is applying, then the 10th step is application, generalization in new situation. This is very, very important, where after generalizing, after whatever common things are being identified in interpretation, we are going to generalize them, and this generalized information is applied in the daily life and in learning more difficult situations. And not only that, the generalization will also help us to bridge the gaps between the classroom learning, classroom situations and real life situations. And sometimes the students can also predict and explain different biological phenomena on the basis of the principle of generalization. So generalization is very, very important, because especially in biological science subjects, the student would be able to identify the biological phenomena, and based on this he would going to principalize different methods. So generalization and applying this generalization in a new situation is really very important. Then what is the role of the teacher actually in problem solving? So role of the teacher, when we are going to discuss, teacher doesn't give a ready-made solution to the problem. As I told you, teacher should act as a stage setter. But in fact, teacher should allow the students to identify the problem by creating a situation, by making the students to involve in the activity by posing questions, or by performing an activity, or by eliciting the inquiry from the students. So with all this, I can tell you that you have to, as a teacher, I have to initiate thinking in my students. I have to facilitate my students to recall their existing knowledge and construct it to the situation by making them to contextualize the situation. So this is what we can try to tell. The teacher will never give a ready-made solution to the problem, but he creates a platform. Then he also encourages the students to plan their methods of problem solving, as we could see, and the students learn by thinking themselves while they are working on the problem, and they themselves try to discover the solution for the problem. And I have to ensure that each and every student in the group should participate, because always problem solving approach is nothing but it is a collaborative effort where every student should play a very, very important role. And as a teacher, I have to encourage cooperation, helping attitude within and between the group members. And lastly, I should reflect, discuss explicitly on the problem, acknowledging the contributions of my students. So this is what is the actual role of the teacher. Now, teacher does continuous comprehensive evaluation of the students after completing the project. What is the role of the teacher? The teacher has to do continuous comprehensive evaluation of the student and assess them on the following parameters. How I have to assess my students' presentation, problem solving. The first one is by reasoning and justification. Then the second one is how much they are able to complete the work. Completion of the work is the next one. Then the third one is correctness of the solution, whether the correct points are being identified by my students, presented by my students. Then the next one is group participation. In the group, how many students are able to participate? Whether everybody are participating, are there any students who are just sitting silently? So what is the participation of group members, and how novelly my students are able to present the problem, novelty in approaching the problem, how creatively they are able to present, what novelty has been exhibited by them, and multiple approaches of problem solving. So what are the multiple approaches, number of approaches my students were being able to follow to show solution to the problem. So that is what is multiple approaches. If the problem is revolving around the performance of any activity or an experiment, then the following question should come into the point. That means if an experimentation is being conducted by my students, when I assess as a teacher, I have to follow these things. What do you think would happen? I should ask my students, what do you think if this has happened? What will it happen when this is like this? What will it happen? What did actually happen when you were trying to do the experiment? What actually has happened, and why it has happened, and did you find any differences from your hypothesis, or did you find any differences before you started off? You have formulated some hypothesis. Are you able to, did you find any difference from your assumptions to the findings which you have got? And how would you further explain this with a particular reasoning? So these are all the parameters which a teacher has to put in mind when he is going to assess the performance of his students. Then a few problems that could be studied by using this problem solving approach. So what are the different problems you can create, you can encourage, you can take down in biological science subject? The first one is I am giving you few examples here. You can study the effect of temperature on the microbial growth, how the temperature is showing its effect on the microbial growth. Then the second one, is it safe to drink tap water supplied by our municipality or Gram Panchayat? Is it really safe? You can ask your students to take this problem and they are going to solve it out. They are going to bring it out. Okay. Then the next one is, who is more likely to suffer from anemia? So who is more likely to, anemia is a common aspect which we could see among our students. So you can ask our students who are more likely to suffer from anemia. They can take up this problem. In which soil beans or groundnuts or maize sprout quickly? They can take up different types of soils and they can take maize, groundnuts, beans, and in which type of soil does they sprout quickly? We can ask our students to do. Can we remove superstitions? And if you can remove superstitions from the people, how you could do it? This also could be a problem. And in whom the superstitions abound more? In which people, whether it is in urban people, urban area people, or rural people, remote people, in which area, which locality of people have more superstitions? Okay, is calcium carbide useful for ripening the fruits? Is it really useful? If it is really useful, what are its harmful effects? How it is having its effect on our human body? This also could be studied. So these are a few problems which we can make our students to think upon, and they can find a solution to that by problem solving approach. Problem solving, I would like to take one example and show you how the steps are involved. So this is an example which I have taken up. I have taken a topic to study the effect of temperature on the microbial growth. So here, when I take the first one is creating a problematic situation for observation. This is the first step. Here I try to take the microorganisms grown in the test tube 1, 2 and 3, incubate them at different temperatures, and I incubated at different temperatures are given to my students. They observe them in the test tube 1 and 3, and which has minimum growth, while in the test tube 2 there is a maximum growth seen. So with this observation, this is one problematic situation which I have created. So by observation, by keen observation, they are able to identify that test tube 1 and 3 is having minimum growth and test tube 2 is having maximum microbial growth. Then with this, what they try to do, they are going to define the problem. In defining the problem, they will define the problem by saying that the microbial growth is affected by some environmental factors. They define the problem by saying that microbial growth is affected by some environmental factors. and in the next step they analyze the problem by saying that the student will analyze why in the test tube 1 and 2 there is minimum growth and whether this is due to inhibitory effects. This is what they are going to analyze. Then they are going to frame the hypothesis like saying that it may be due to some extrinsic factors such as temperature and relative humidity. The minimal growth might be due to any intrinsic factors like pH of the food, or it might be due to the type of the food sample used. So these are the 3 tentative hypotheses which they have formulated. Then after formulation of this, testing of the hypothesis, the data collected is tested at, the microbial growth is tested at 4 degrees, microbial growth at 37 degrees, microbes are grown at 45 degrees. So these 3 degrees the microbes are grown. Then the data reflects that the microbial growth is maximum at 37 degrees and minimum at 4 degrees centigrade and 45 degrees centigrade. So they have got the data, collected the data that microbes grow in these 3 different temperatures, and using this data collection they have gone through their samples and then they have grown the microorganisms at these 3 different temperatures, and they came to a conclusion by saying that temperature plays a very important role on the growth of microorganisms, and they generalize the findings that temperature at which the growth of the microorganisms is maximum may be called as optimal temperature. So optimal temperature, what is optimal temperature? Is where the temperature where the microorganisms growth is maximum. This is what they are able to generalize. And with this basic information, they are going to apply this in the same situations, in the daily life situations, where they try to find out the effect of other factors on the microbial growth by keeping the temperature constant and manipulating the other variables like pH of the food and relative humidity. So by keeping this pH of the food and relative humidity as a constant, they try to identify, they try to apply this principle in their daily life situations. And the summary of this is that this is how the problem solving approach which the student has learned in his biological science is helpful to take up all the situations that are happening in his daily life. So I can conclude by telling that problem solving approach keeps the learner in focus and allows the learner to get actively involved in the process of learning, because he is involving himself, and this would create joyful and challenging learning. And these 2 are the cardinal principles of learning that is happening. And this technique makes the learner as a seeker of knowledge, and it imparts a specialized training for individualized thinking, where the child will never try to believe it, but he is going to involve in it, inquire in it, take up a problem, study the problem in different situations, formulate the hypothesis, test the hypothesis, come out with a generalization, where it is making him, it is giving a specialized training for individual thinking. And this is how problem solving approach could be used, and the uses of problem solving approach with an example. And you can give some assignment like this. Select a topic of your choice from 8th, 9th and 10th class biological science textbook and find out a solution to it by using the steps involved in problem solving approach. So this is one activity which I can assign to my students. Or identify a problem by observing your surroundings, and by discussing it with your peer group, try to solve it in a scientific way by following the steps in the problem solving approach. This also could be given as an assignment to my students. Then these are some of the video links where you can click on all these links, and you can get so much additional information related to what are the steps, examples, tips, tips, and what are the different methods, how fun experiments are being done, what is problem solving approach, what are the different ways in how the students try to learn. You can get additional information related to all this. And these are some of the reference books where you can go through to get additional information on problem solving approach. Then these are the few self-assessment questions which are being given, where you can assess yourself after going through this module. And these are the glossary aspects, and I thank all of you for listening to this lecture. Thank you.